In Activity 7, Scale and Relative Distance, students apply what they've learned about scale to relative distance. Students first measure distances from classroom objects and draw scaled maps, and then they use their maps to compare and discuss the relative distances of the objects from one another. You'll need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 7, meter sticks, and metric rulers. You'll need to provide the following materials: a book and a local map. To prepare for the activity, make a copy of Activity Sheet 7 for each student. Copy the simple map shown in Figure 7.1 and measure and draw lines representing streets 30 centimeters apart. Then label 3 locations: school, home, and store, as shown in Figure 7.1. Finally, write the scale 15 centimeters to 1 kilometer below the map. Each team of 4 will need a metric ruler and a meter stick. To begin the activity, review with the class the use of scale in constructing models to show accurately relative sizes. Define the term relative distance as how far apart one set of objects is when compared with another set of objects. Then, ask students, can you name anything that shows relative distance and is drawn to scale? Students may be familiar with maps, nautical charts, or architectural blueprints. Show students a local map and explain that a map is a scale drawing used to represent the geographical location of places and things. Further explain that maps also show the relative distances between different locations on the map. Then draw students' attention to the simple map you've drawn on the board and have students identify the scale, 15 centimeters to 1 kilometer, or 15 centimeters on the map represents 1 kilometer of actual distance. Next, lay a meter stick against the board so that students can see you measure the distance between school and home. Ask students various questions to help them understand the scale map, such as, what is the scaled distance from school to home, from school to store? Students should respond 30 centimeters and 60 centimeters respectively. Then ask, according to the scale on this map, how far is the actual distance from school to home, from school to the store? Students should calculate 2 kilometers and 4 kilometers respectively. And finally, ask students which location is furthest and closest to the school relative to the other location. Students should respond that the store is the furthest from the school and home is the closest. Next, place a book on the floor in front of the board and inform students that they will measure the distances from the book to their desks, from the book to your desk, and from the book to the wall opposite the book. Distribute a copy of Activity Sheet 7 to each student and rulers and meter sticks to each team. Tell the class to follow the instructions on their activity sheets. Note that you may choose to do this exercise as a class using a single scale decided by all. Instruct students to measure straight-line distances in the room and decide on a scale that will allow the scaled distances to fit on their activity sheets. Students should then make drawings on their activity sheets that represent the objects and show the scaled distances from one to another. After teams have completed Activity Sheet 7, begin a discussion of scale and relative distance. Ask students, which object is farthest from the board relative to the other objects? By looking at your scale drawing, can you make a good estimate of the relative distances of the objects from the board? Explain to the class that maps drawn accurately to scale allow us to visualize relative distances among points without having to calculate actual distances. Then ask students, how can this information be useful? Students may suggest that they have found looking at maps useful during trips by car or plane. Inform students that a road map or a nautical chart helps us visualize and compare distances that separate points of interest. For instance, the relative distances shown on an architectural drawing or blueprint help us compare spaces on the inside or the outside of a building. Finally, guide students to understand that scale drawings can also show the relative distances of the planets from the Sun. Explain that in the next activity, students will examine the relative distances of the planets from the Sun. To conclude the activity, return the rulers and meter sticks to the kit. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.